Good morning and welcome everyone. My name is David Corey, and this is the 9th episode in our 15-part series about all of the different EQ competencies that make up the MHS model of EQ. Foundational, the concept of emotional intelligence, that is our ability to use our brains, which processes emotions and emotional information, to be more intelligent about emotions and use that information in a way that helps us to achieve our goals and do what it is that that we truly desire, in life, and to be effective leaders, to be effective parents, to be effective siblings, sons, daughters, etc. And so this particular episode today is all about social responsibility. And unfortunately, I have to go it alone today. I will be missing my friend and good colleague, Mr. Kim Cairns from Victoria. He is unable to make it this morning, and so we will miss him, and we will carry on. All right, so what is social responsibility anyway, and how does it fit into this whole model of EQ? Well, it is within the interpersonal relationship composite of our wheel model of emotional intelligence, and social responsibility is one of three what I like to refer to as EQ competencies in the composite, one of which is interpersonal relationships. So our ability to have good relationships with others and to really connect with people. The other piece is empathy in the interpersonal composite. Empathy, of course, we covered in our last episode, and if you missed that, you can certainly take a look at the recording on our YouTube channel. And the final one is social responsibility. Now, what I'd like to do here today is I'd like to switch to a PowerPoint presentation, something I don't usually do when we do this, but I thought in Kim's absence and our ability to have a conversation about this, that I would share a little PowerPoint presentation with you. Now, I've got the Q&A feature turned on, and so by all means, if you have any questions, please submit those questions, and we'll take a look back frequently to see what questions you may have for me, and I'll try to answer those as they come in. But let's take a quick look at our PowerPoint presentation. So what we're going to take a look at then is begins with the idea that that social responsibility is the ability to give back so others benefit from what you have. And there are many different ways to say that. There are lots of different ways to define social responsibility, but it is that responsibility for the fact that we are social beings and we live in a social world, and we live in a social context. And here you see, of course, a very famous person with respect to social responsibility, and that is Mother Teresa. And her completely selfless way of living is a great inspiration for social responsibility for us. And this idea to give back so others benefit from what you have. And there are lots of great reasons to do that. But I first want to start with why we don't do more of that. And I have a quotation here from Daniel Goleman. Goleman says that it's self-absorption in all its forms, which kills empathy. There's the connection between social responsibility and empathy, is that social responsibility often arises out of our empathy, that is our paying attention, our desire to feel with others. He says that self-absorption kills empathy, let alone compassion. When we focus on ourselves, our world contracts as our problems and preoccupations loom large. But when we focus on others, our world expands. Our own problems drift to the periphery of the mind and so seem smaller, and we increase our capacity for connection or compassionate action. That comes from Goleman's 2006 book, Social Intelligence, The New Science of Human Relationships. And I really like the quotation. it's very interesting, this whole idea of self-absorption, self-centeredness, and the way that that in fact hinders our ability to be socially responsible. I sometimes ask groups of people if they know which is one of the most successful human development programs in the history of the world, and the answer might surprise you or may not surprise you. The answer is Alcoholics Anonymous. And in the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, they actually acknowledge the selfishness of the disease and the egocentrism that is inherent in the disease. And one of the ways of addressing that egocentrism is to get people to shift their focus out from an inward focus on themselves and getting their own needs met at the expense of everyone else around them, to shifting towards others. And I really like the 12th step of the 12 steps of AA, which is all about carrying the message to others. And there's a saying in AA, which is, if you don't give it away, you don't get to keep what you've gained. And so it's a great metaphor. It connects greatly to this idea of social responsibility. So let's move on and think a little bit more about this idea of selfishness versus selflessness. And I guess one of the reasons that we are selfish is at a very primitive level is for our very survival. And ultimately, we're kind of hardwired for to survive, and it is that drive to survive, which and the drive to protect, which we've come to refer to as the ego. And whereas it is necessary to have a level of ego, and it's important that we have this personal interest, it can get out of control. And no more topical demonstration of a completely out of control ego do we have than this group, ISIL or ISIS, or however you want to refer to them. But this misguided group of individuals who are so completely focused on their own ego, with the inability to think long term and think about the future of our world, is really quite frightening. And in the model of ego that you see on the left of your screen there, it's no accident that we have men at the top of the pyramid. This is a demonstration of the history of our organizational structures, and it's one very much built on, and dependent on dominance, where one organism dominates another. And then we see what is a more sustainable method of organizing ourselves moving forward, which in stark contrast to the idea of the ego, we have the word echo. And there we see that organisms are more organized in more of a matrix format, and where there is an interdependency, which is really the kind of interdependency that we're moving towards, which is sustainable over time. Now, how do we understand this in light of the idea of social responsibility? Well, I think that there's a couple of great books. Well, there's many great books, but two great books which really exemplify the importance of social responsibility. One of which is The Eighth Habit. And what I think is really interesting, as you probably know, and most of you have already read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey wrote this book, The Eighth Habit, a little bit later, and quite a few years after the 7 Habits came out. And one of the reasons that he wrote it was he talked about the concept of moving from effectiveness, which was what the 7 Habits were all about, to the concept of greatness. That you can move from effectiveness to greatness. And I really like the idea that unless you're using your skills for good, that is, for the perpetuation of the planet, of the species, it's merely effectiveness. And people sometimes get this confused as well. And around the whole concept of emotional intelligence, people talk about emotional intelligence being used for evil. Well, it's actually not possible to use emotional intelligence, if it's truly an intelligence, for evil, because that's not intelligent, because it's not sustainable, it's short-sighted, it's not far-sighted and sustainable thinking, which is what intelligence is all about. So here we've got Covey in the 8th habit talking about moving from effectiveness to greatness when you consider what your effectiveness is for. If it's not for the sustainability of the planet, then it's not intelligent, it's not greatness. And I love the concept. And then we move over to Martin Seligman's Authentic Happiness, where he talks about the idea that you can be superficially happy when the focus of your happiness pursuit is yourself, when it's egocentric, when it's turned inward, when it's looking at yourself. But you don't get to be authentically happy until you're focused on the happiness of others, and looking at and considering and wondering, how can I help others to be happy? And then another great reference, which I don't want to miss making a reference to, is Maslow's latest version of his pyramid has not self-actualization at the peak of the pyramid, which is what most of us learned in university in Psych 101. However, what is at the top of Maslow's latest pyramid that was pieced together through his diary and later writings before he passed away was the concept of self-transcendence. And self-transcendence is above self-actualization, and it's about helping others self-actualize. It's about those peak experiences in life when we feel that greatness that Covey referred to because of the impact we're making on others. And all of this is tied in and connected to this concept of social responsibility. And so we might then think about and consider and ask, well, how can we be more socially responsible? What are the areas that we would consider or think about or do? And I know that lots of you are currently involved in wonderful areas of social responsibility, and I think that's fantastic. And so, what are other areas, or what are ways that we can shift our thinking to more of a socially responsible way of being? And I guess that's that would be a goal here with respect to this concept of social responsibility. So I'm going to flip back to just check and see whether you have any questions for me at this moment, and just shift out of screen sharing and back to our camera and our screen. And once again, thank you for joining us. Once again, I'm David Corey with the Emotional Intelligence Training Company, and we're here talking about social responsibility. And I'd love to see your questions and see what's on your mind today as we talk about social responsibility, and also just talk about the fact that that it is social responsibility upon which the future of our world depends. If we don't get more people thinking, considering ways of being socially responsible. And it really connects in nicely with our definition of leadership. Our definition of leadership at the Emotional Intelligence Training Company is all about choosing to be part of the solution. And I am fond of saying that if we don't choose to be part of the solution, then by default, we choose to be part of the problem. And that's our definition of leadership. It's a definition of leadership which I think is available and open to everyone who is interested in stepping up to the plate, in doing what needs to be done, in taking more control over one's life, over one's immediate surroundings, over one's circumstances, and choosing to be part of the solution for, first of all, ourselves, and then second of all, for others. And there is this other dichotomy in all of our EQ competencies. And if we think about all 15 EQ competencies like the sliders of a mixing console in a recording studio. And some of you may be able to relate to this more than others, but these sliders all adjust various parts of the audio mix. And if you think about those sliders as being from the self at one end of the continuum to others at the other end of the continuum, you see that those sliders have optimal placements. And what I mean by that is that if the sliders are too far towards the self, that is, where we are thinking too much about our own needs and our own desires and our own wants, then that may be good for us, but it may not be good for the people around us. And if those sliders are too far towards others, then that may be very good for others, but it may not be very good for us. And there is an optimal balance. With respect to some of the competencies that we've already talked about, one of which is self-regard. If that slider is too far towards ourselves and we think that we are the best thing since sliced bread, then that may not be good for others. But if we see ourselves as capable and confident and have a healthy self-regard, which is about seeing that we are effective and useful in the service of others, then that may be a very good thing for us and others. And it's about that being good for us and others, which is really important. With empathy as well. Empathy is about feeling with others and making sure that we are paying attention and that our focus and our concentration is on others. But if it's on others at our own expense, then that can't be a good thing for us. And if it's not a good thing for us, ultimately it's not a good thing for others. Interpersonal relationships. When interpersonal relationships are all about others and not about us, then we may not get our needs met in those relationships. We may not get what we want and need, and ultimately that won't be good for us. It doesn't serve us, and when we are not served, we don't serve others well at all. And so we need to find that optimal balance between self and others. So here's a question which I think is going to be answered by our next slide, and the question is about social responsibility in the workplace and whether you can be socially responsible in the workplace. And so I'm just going to go back to our PowerPoint presentation and just review our last slide with you, and I think that it might answer that question. So let's try that. We'll just get the correct screen here, and so here are the areas that I'd like to suggest that we think about and consider how we can possibly be more socially responsible. And I think that let's start in a very small circle and then move outward in concentric circles. And so let's start with the home and think about the ways around your home that you can be socially responsible. And for many of us, this begins with how we can I love bumper stickers and I love sayings, and one that really struck home with me was a bumper sticker on the back of a basket attached to the back of a bicycle, and it just really has stuck with me. Excuse me, you may have seen this saying as well, but the saying is, live simply so others may simply live. And I guess that is a really great way to think about being socially responsible in terms of how you live around the home, which is about reducing the packaging that you bring home, which is about recycling and reusing and reducing the amount that we consume. And so that's what I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about home. I'm thinking about the environment, thinking about our footprint on the planet, etc. And then in terms of family, I'm thinking about how we can both be considerate of family members and socially responsible with them, and also doing things together as a family to be socially responsible. Things like volunteering together with volunteer organizations, looking for volunteer opportunities as a family, thinking about ways of getting involved in perhaps environmentally conscious efforts, events, etc., raising money for good causes. All of these things are things that we can do as a family, and then being considerate of opportunities for perhaps children. If you're the parents, it's children given given their own choice would probably not necessarily choose to be socially responsible. However, if we show them the benefits of being involved in being socially responsible, then they can learn from that, etc., and carry that on. In terms of community, what I'm thinking about there is I'm thinking about ways that we can be socially responsible in and around our communities. I'm thinking about with neighbors. I'm thinking about, what can we do for our neighbors? One of our neighbors has twins, and it's a heavy load, and it's a difficult time with a young child and young twins, and so I'm always looking out for things that I can do for her and for her husband, and how I can help them, and so there are things like we have these big garbage and recycling bins, and I know that that is sometimes difficult to think about, to getting those out on the day that the trucks come by, and so thinking about that, ways that we can serve and support others. And here in our particular city where we're based now, in Calgary, Alberta, in the wintertime it can snow, and the snow can get to make it difficult to walk. So we have to get out there with shovels and move the snow off the sidewalks, etc. And so that's another thing that we can do for our neighbors, and being socially responsible, thinking about what we can do that's nice for them. When we're out walking around the community, in and around the community, we have a dog, and so we're out with the dog all the time. I'm always looking for to pick up litter and pick up trash, and just to, ways to give back to the community. And I just think if everyone did that, so what a much nicer and better community that we would have. And I know there are parts in the world where that's very difficult, and where people have a difficult time thinking about their community in that way. And so you see trash that builds up in the community where it doesn't belong, and it's kind of sad that people have that view of their community, and view towards where it is that they live, but also trying to understand the other issues that they face at the same time. So how can we be socially responsible in the community? And then number 4 is about the workplace. I think there are several opportunities in the workplace. One of which is being socially responsible with peers. How can I help? How can I contribute? How can I support them in their work? Knowing that in turn that they will also hopefully support me when I need them. Etc. And it's not the reason that I do it. The reason that I do it is because it feels good to be to give in the world, and to operate more from a place of eco than a place of ego. And number 2, with my reports, the people that report to me, if I'm a manager, I'm looking for opportunities to involve them in the types of projects that are going to help them to grow and help them develop. So I'm being socially responsible and thinking about them and their development, and what they can learn, the skills they can gain, etc. And so I'm thinking about them in that way. I'm thinking about my manager as well. How can I support my manager? How can I be socially responsible towards my manager, and think about how to make them look good, to acknowledge them, to give them credit, etc. Many different things that I can do towards my manager. And finally, towards my team, I think that there is a real opportunity here in volunteering and being socially responsible together. First of all, it gets us involved in a social responsibility activity together. And second, there's the element of team building that goes on when we do that. When we go out and work on a home for Habitat for Humanity together, or if we go down to the food bank and help sort and move boxes around the warehouse together, we are building team. We're working together, doing something fun and interesting, giving back to the community, and being socially responsible. And finally, I've got world down there as number 5, and I think that this is an interesting one that is now very possible via technology. That it used to be that we were just doing business with the people and the organizations in our own communities and in our own cities and maybe in our own provinces or states, but now with the internet, we are working with, we impact, we affect, we are in communication with the world, and I think that's really important to think about how we can be socially responsible with the world, and how we can raise money, how we can help out with resources, with information, etc., and be socially socially responsible rather with other parts of the world that may be less fortunate than us and don't have the same opportunities that we have in the developed world. So these are some of my ideas and suggestions for you. I hope it stimulates some thought for you. And once again, I will check for questions in a moment. But I do want to point out a quotation that I really like from Mahatma Gandhi. And apparently he said, "The fragrance always remains in the hand that gives the rose." And again, in being socially responsible, we cannot help but be affected in a positive way by that. We can't help but get out of ourselves and shift the focus to others. We can't help but expand our world. We can't help but expand the positive impact that we make on the world and those around us through social responsibility. So I'm going to switch back to the camera now and check back to see what questions you have, if any, and we'll take a look at that, and then we will wrap up. We just have a couple of minutes left, and I thank you for joining me today for this live video broadcast, and thank you for those of you who have clicked on this recording as well, for taking a look and considering about social responsibility. And a question here that I have is, not sure if it's my computer, but the slides are not moving forward at the same rate that you're talking about each subject. Oh, I'm really sorry about that, Gina, and nice to hear from you, Gina. Yeah, I'm not really sure about that. I haven't used slide presentations, PowerPoint presentations with a lot of Google Hangouts. So if that is the case and those slides didn't come up at the right rate, I apologize for that. But by all means, if you would like to take a look at the slides, I'm happy to send you that short little presentation, and you can take a look at that at your leisure if you wish. And really, you know, there's a great quotation from Goleman in there from his book Social Intelligence, and a great quotation from Gandhi, and just some areas that I always encourage people to think about in terms of social responsibility and where they can be more socially responsible. And I just think that, you know, our world depends on every single one of us 7 billion thinking about how we can be more socially responsible. And I realize that some of us are more capable and competent than others to do that. In which case, those of us with more competence and more capability have to really step up, and that's where we encourage this idea, our idea of leadership, which is about choosing to be part of the solution. That's where that comes in, and I hope that each one of you is thinking about how you can be part of the solution and be socially responsible to the extent that you are able, and make this world a better place for everyone. So thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions after the fact, by all means, email me, david@eitrainingcompany.com. I'd love to hear from you. Love to answer your questions about social responsibility or any other aspect of emotional intelligence or our model of EQ that we use, which is owned by Multi Health Systems out of Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and based on the original work of Dr. Reuven Bar-Ohm throughout the 80s and throughout the 80s and 90s. So someone would like to have the slides. If you want the slides, email me, david@davidcorey.com. I'm happy to reply with the slides attached, and you can view those again at your convenience. So thanks very much, everyone, for joining us. And I look forward to our ongoing communication. Bye for now. Have a wonderful day. And join us for our next video broadcast, which will be part 10 in our series for our module on problem solving. Hope to see you soon. Bye for now.